You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte Nichole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah. Good morning. It's Tuesday, September 27th. It is National Appreciation Day, National Crush a Can Day, Google's birthday, Morning Show Host Day. Shout out to us. National Chocolate Milk Day, National Corned Beef and Hash Day, National Gay Men's HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, National Voter Registration Day. Make sure you go and register to vote. National Woman Road Warrior Day, and National Scarf Day, and also probably the most important of them all, National Day of Forgiveness. Thank you for joining and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. We're live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and audio only on Clubhouse. And if you are on Clubhouse, you can also participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story most recently presented. But without further ado, let's pay a quick bill and get right back to the news.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of Angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's having an amazing Talk About It Tuesday. Well, we're going to be talking about a lot of things, and we're going to start it off with the dope dad himself. That's right, Rico Lamitte. When he's not changing diapers and chasing kids around for coloring crayons and sharing their paste, you can find him doing the exact same thing at a local TEDx convention, babysitting grown-ass adults in the conference room. When he's not doing any of that, you know what he's doing? That's right. He's brushing up on his collegiate football skills, when you can find him constantly backpedaling on Safe Banking and Safe Banking Plus. But nonetheless, it is none other than the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
Oh, man, thank you for that amazing intro, Jason, and welcome back, everyone out there watching, listening, and getting high at 9 with us yet again on this Talk About It Tuesday morning, where we are definitely going to be bringing the spice for your carne asada ass, whether you're into corn, tortillas, or flour. My headline today comes from the Fresh Toast. A new poll sheds light on GOP's progressing views on cannabis legislation. Midterm elections are right around the corner, and American political polarization is at an all-time high. I mean, yesterday, Arizona Democrat Senator Kristen Sinema went viral for saying, despite their apparent differences, she and Republican Senator Mitch McConnell have forged a friendship. Seriously, this morning's mainstream news headlines on the statement were clearly pushing us further one way or the other. All you have to do is Google that shit, and you'll see the differences between CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News just pushing you one way or the other. Should you be mad? Should you be happy about it? I don't know. Just listen to what they tell you to do. But with poll after poll suggesting the cannabis industry is indeed a microcosm of the greater United States, maybe it's time we stop reacting so emotionally to clickbaity headlines and demonizing each other based on stated political affiliations. We're not really all that different in wants and needs, despite being constantly told that we are. Personally, I'm anti-party. One of the reasons I joined State of Cannabis News Hour team previously and fought so hard for us to continue here at High at 9 News was the political diversity of our correspondents. I grew up as an Army brat living between Germany and Virginia and was exposed to more staunch Black Republicans, conservatives, and white racists identifying as liberals than anybody else that I know. This is why I believe that we should bring the data and not the drama when it comes to moving issues forward. If we follow the numbers, there's a lot more common points of interest available to move this thing forward into a place everyone wants to be. And a new poll conducted on behalf of National Cannabis Roundtable in late August surveyed 1,000 Republican voters. They seem to agree with me. The poll found majority of Republicans surveyed support a number of progressive cannabis policies. It also surprisingly suggested Republican voters favor access and reform more than media leads us to believe, in ways that align them closer to Democrats than what's typically seen in today's broader political climate. Here are some of the key takeaways. Nearly 3 in 4, 73%, agree. Of GOP voters agree legal cannabis companies should be entitled to the same rights as any other legal business. More than 3 in 4 GOP voters, 76% agree that if states legalize cannabis, the federal government should not fight the state, but they should step aside and remove any obstacles. By a lopsided 58% to 10% margin, GOP voters say that states should be responsible for regulating legal cannabis over the federal government. Nearly 2 in 3 GOP voters, 65%, say legal cannabis companies should have access to the banking system and be able to open and use bank accounts like any other legal business. By a clear 51 to 33% majority, GOP voters say legal cannabis companies should have access to the capital markets and should be able to sell stock and be listed on stock exchange. Over 2/3, 69%, favor sentence reviews for people convicted of nonviolent cannabis crimes in states where cannabis is now legal for adult use. 56 to 34% majority GOP voters favor expunging cannabis convictions from a person's record if adult use cannabis is legal in their state. Roughly 3/4 of the voters favor legalizing cannabis for medical purposes, and nearly half of them have used recreationally and actually openly say that they have used it for recreational purposes or medicinal, either or. All right, so my biggest takeaway from the poll is we're a lot closer than we think. And if we take a few minutes each day to shut down the noise and listen to each other instead of the talking heads on cable news networks, we'd be a lot closer to where we want in the race towards federal legalization. I know my nerd ass can read through the data points like this all day, but I'm interested in hearing everybody else's thoughts on the poll. This is Rico Lamitte, dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News.
Well, I've been saying this forever, and no one freaking listens to me, that Republicans are not the devil. We do want very similar things when it comes to cannabis, just our messaging is different. We look at it from a different perspective of like states' rights and those sorts of things. Taking care of veterans. People don't want people going to jail for a plan for no apparent reason. I mean, you just got to know how to speak to Republicans. We're people too, just like corporations.
Yeah, that's right, Gretchen.
Wait, what?
That's right. We are people too.
You're listening closely. You caught it.
I love, Gretchen, how you just followed that right up with the sip of tea. Just like,
a little something. You see, I don't know. Can you tell my upright? I got a little Romney
Gretchen's
in
been
there.
bringing the heat this week. I love it.
Oh boy.
Damn.
Romney.
Republicans totally are people, much like politicians or much like corporations. That's like a very good, it's a very good reality.
See, the more everyone is like, we're all so different, but yet at the same time, we are all so much the same.
No, but I thought it was really cool to see how progressive they were, and it was encouraging to see Republican support for not just for reform, but also for expungement and knocking people off of those felony and misdemeanor lists because of their past in there. That's something that we don't hear from mainstream media, both in the cannabis space and in the mainstream cable news networks. They're not going to tell you that Republican voters are for just getting people back on track and allowing more people to have access to this. So that was encouraging for me.
Well, and I think so many people don't recognize that cannabis is a generational issue. I don't think younger voters care the same way that, someone who was born in Reefer Madness does. It's just not the same issue for
100%.
Republican.
100%. They all understand that it's just a plant.
And the breakdown of age from this was pretty interesting too, because it's pretty evenly split. 18 to 34. The age 18 to 34 was 16% of the respondents. 35 to 44, 14% of the respondents. 45 to 54% age is 20%. 55 to 64, 22%, and 65 up 28%. So it's pretty split across the board of people who responded. So it's a good data set to pull from all this stuff.
I don't know very many Republicans living in Southern California and kind of growing up in a musician's household. I tend to know a lot of people on the left side, but the few Republicans that I do know, or at least open Republicans that I do know, tend to smoke the best weed in the world. So I do have to give them that.
Very, very true.
That's not true. Hold on.
True.
No.
Yes.
Gretchen, hold on. Gretchen didn't know what gassy meant. We just found out on the back end
I don't
of the
consume.
show.
I'm not a consumer.
Exactly,
Yeah, but
she's a
Mitt Romney. She's a Mitt Romney Republican.
Bro.
Yeah.
Wait. How many?
It's better than a Trumper.
How many?
I don't know. We're the majority.
All right, we can't
No,
go
you're
this far.
not. In what
We
world
can't
are
go
you
this
the
far.
majority?
In all the look at all the polls. Look at all the
Jason,
polls.
Jason, you're going to stop now. Jason, you're going to stop now. We're going to go ahead and
I'd rather
segue so
look at
you can
what's
piss
on the
people off
poll
in other
than the poll itself.
We're going to go ahead and segue so we could piss people off in other manners, for that matter. Jason Beck, thank you so much for that, for the polls of polls, and always bringing us the poll, Rico. Thank you so much. And up next, we have Mr. Jason Beck. Jason's here to piss us off and really stir the pot with his big stick that's also known as the best weed in the world, that he carries around much like his wizard's wand. In his spirit, he would like you all to know that your weed sucks compared to the stuff that's in his pocket. Jason Beck, highest Republican
Yes.
that I know, and obviously the only person that we know that's a Republican that smokes the best weed in the world, because Ed knows too. So,
Yes, Ed is aware. You're 100%. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction this morning, Nicole, because you're right. It is the best weed in the world. And when I am smoking with Republicans, they are fortunate enough to be smoking the best weed in the world as well. But, however, nonetheless, very interesting study today. And I'm not sure if this is real or not, because I question some of the things in this, but nonetheless, this is the article, and we're gonna follow along, because a study shows Oklahoma as the most curious state about CBD. A new study from medical cannabis experts at LeafWell determined that Oklahoma is the most CBD obsessed state in all the nation. LeafWell says they examined Google Trends data of search terms frequently used by people interested in CBD. These terms were then combined to give each state a total search score to discover which states have been the most interested in CBD over the past year. The analysis revealed that Oklahoma is the #1 state in the nation as the state's most curious about CBD. With a total search score of 562, Oklahoma made the top of the list for its population, having the highest search levels for the phrases, get ready for all of these, you guys: CBD, CBD oil, medical marijuana, cannabis, buy CBD, what is CBD, and, of course, that's right, we can't leave it out, THC. Combined, additionally, Oklahoma was the second most state to search for medical marijuana as a single searched item. The state of Vermont marked the second most curious state about CBD with a score of 539. And New Mexico took third place with a score of 533. Maine was fourth place in the analysis with a score of 524, and Arkansas took fifth place with a score of 502. In a quote, they say, "This year we have a significant jump of interest for CBD and medical marijuana, which have resulted in significant increases in searches for the substance. The popularity of CBD is due to considerable research into the substance, resulting in its many health benefits, such as relief of anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorders, and depression. Leafwell said about the study, the substance has also been used increasingly in the beauty industry over the past few years and is a key ingredient of many successful and well-known skincare products. Leafwell says the study provided interesting insight into which states remain the most interested in CBD, and they say the states at the top of the list appear to be the keenness to know more about medical marijuana and wider their knowledge on THC, Leafwell said. Well, I think that's a very interesting thing, and I'm wondering why California didn't place in this unless they're extrapolating it based off of population size, which I was kind of confused with, but I always just wonder, where's Weed Maps in all of this? And this is Jason Beck reporting for High at 9 News.
I feel like there's a lot more access to things that are in our face in California because the brands are more evolved as far as like Mandy's perfect example. Mandy, how much time do you actually spend having to educate people with Camilla and like helping people understand? Like your brand ambassadors are out there nonstop. I don't think that's happening as much in places like Oklahoma. There's just stores everywhere. Right? They're not like connecting
so hold on.
to the
So there's a shortage of brand ambassadors in Oklahoma?
There's a shortage of education because nobody gives a fuck because everyone's just trapping it everywhere.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair, very fair.
And first of all, there's a massive overproduction of ED out there, so I'm not surprised to hear this is their, big piece of meat, so to speak. But an insane amount of hours that we spend more time educating buyers and customers than anything.
And that's really started in California. We're seeing in the past couple of years, it's really ramped up because the competitive market that we have right now is requiring it. And the only way that you're going to get that advantage in this community and in this market in California is to be able to get to that consumer and educate them. So California brands are actively going to the consumer. We're finding them and we're educating them. We're trying to teach them because it's the only way that we can compete. Whereas in a place like Oklahoma, it's like you could literally sell dirt with THC on it at a fucking store, and somebody from Tennessee will drive in and buy that shit and bring it and trap it back in their fucking state. So like, I think the people that are actually considered like wanting to know, they're just like, well, we're just going to go to the internet because there's nobody at any of these dispensaries that are going to fucking help us.
Yeah. I question like the source of this data too, because, we can't use the same channels of marketing and advertising for THC. So a lot of people, CBD is the gateway drug, period, to information.
In all fairness, I do believe that CBD has probably had the best, given cannabis industry overall, the best free ad promotion as far as changing public perception towards cannabis.
Agreed. And I just bring it back to my grandfather, man. Like he was super pissed off when I left corporate finance 7 years ago and didn't want to talk to me. And then when my company went public back in 2018, he's calling me, asking me for stock recommendations. And he wanted me to send him some fucking some trap THC roll-ons because his CBD wasn't working anymore. Right. So big shout out to CBD for just breaking through that wall for a lot of people who would not have given THC a chance.
Yeah.
Daniela from LinkedIn made a comment that I think is interesting. She said Revlon mascara has CBD. Revlon has CBD mascara now, and like for a company like Revlon,
does that help you see farther?
It obviously it like enhances your vision and it makes it so that your eyes just feel better. No, that's bullshit. I'm lying. That is not what happens.
I don't know. I believe it.
It works for like 2 months, and then you have to switch to Revlon Green.
Hold on. Hold on. Maybe it makes your lashes grow faster.
It doesn't work anymore. You
don't
lie anymore.
To Daniela's point, CBD is just more accessible. To all of these folks. I mean it's just popping up everywhere. And so like my mother, who's semi-interested, but is never going to set foot in the dispensary because that just scares the shit out of her, is going to be like, what's CBD? And she's going to look it up on the internet and try and figure it out. Or she'll call me and I say, I don't know this kind of thing.
Well, and seniors, I think, or not just seniors, just like older community in general are talking about it. And the older community in general are a lot of the ones that are not, like you said, going to walk into a dispensary or don't realize that Weed Maps is even a thing, right? So they're just going to go to the old Google box and they're going to be like, what does CBD do?
Well, and it's so easily accessible, like Gretchen said. Like, you can walk into any Kroger grocery store, the largest national grocery chain. You can walk into any one of them, and if you look just past the self-checkout aisles in most of them right now, there's actually a little like white end cap box, and it's just nothing but CBD products with brands like that we know of from the THC cannabis industry, like Select. Like Select has 2 shelves on that thing.
Barkley is on there.
It's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
I do want to see something, though, from the survey and see it redone and recalculated on a metropolitan area basis, because I think, like, Oklahoma's kind of surprising. They have really good access out there for medical. So I'm thinking, maybe if we redid this and did it at metropolitan areas, is it going to be Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area that's showing the highest CBD? We've got all the conservative moms down there in that area. So it's, who knows?
Yeah, CBD definitely.
Shout out to conservative moms.
Yeah, CBD's helped pave way a little bit for THC. In a lot of circumstances, it's made it more socially acceptable to talk about. And many of you guys don't know this, but I actually have a CBD brand that's in the market, and it's so much easier to sell than anything THC related. I don't even have to send samples to a store. Just pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I got this product. You want to carry it? And they just place an order. It's that fast.
They'll just send me the order form and we'll drop it.
Will do. You need more CBD.
Are you allowed to openly say CBD across the board now, and not, you don't have to say like hemp seed oil, or you have to like work your way around that? Are you still getting pushed back a lot from the censors?
No one cares. No one even asks.
Well, just because no one asks doesn't mean that the FDA isn't watching closely behind you.
So if nobody asks, does that mean nobody's telling either?
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah. Don't ask, don't tell. Exactly right. Exactly.
It feels so much creepier when you say it like that. Don't ask, don't tell.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, it sounds. Oh God, Rico, yours is the creepiest. It's because your voice is the most sensual. So saying something like that in the most sensual manners, like.
You don't ask me, I won't tell.
CBD, deschedule or bust.
CBDs, girl. Let's keep it moving.
Oh yeah.
As a felon. As a felon, she calls herself a lady in the streets, but a freak in the spreadsheets. An ag and efficiency expert that spends her limited downtime working on that ever-elusive doctorate in dirtbag psychology, now offered at Long Beach Community College. Sponsor us. Celebrating. What are you celebrating today? What's on here? Is it milk? Is it chocolate milk day?
No,
it's chocolate milk day.
Okay, so today is like the National Woman Road Warrior Day,
There we
and
go.
I feel like I am a road warrior often, and in this industry, I feel like we have to constantly be getting up and going. So today, I am celebrating National Woman Road Warrior Day.
You heard it here first. Celebrating National Women Road Warrior Day, and a big fan of Fury Road, self-described data bitch herself, Nichole West. What you got for us today?
Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. My headline today is actually coming out of the Green Market Report, and it's in regards to Oregon psilocybin legalization. And apparently the plan is under great scrutiny in Oregon, which I'm not surprised about. This bill was passed, I want to say, hold on, I just did 2020, in November of 2020. Oregon actually passed Measure 109 with the operational program to be scheduled by early 2023. So beginning of next year, we're supposed to have access to psilocybin mushrooms, a move which instantly brought a huge international spotlight on the state. Like everybody's watching right now because this is the first state as a whole to legalize legalize psilocybin mushrooms. So since 2019, other cities have looked at decriminalization of psilocybin and other psychedelics rather than full legalization within a state evolving patchwork of the rules. The plan for the most part of the rules is to eventually have medical legalization, but those states are now looking at Oregon for the business model to emulate or potentially improve. And hopefully it'll be improved because, again, this is the first shot at trying to legalize psilocybin. So starting in January of 2023, Oregon will become the first state to set up the legal psilocybin program with licensed growers, clinical settings for distribution and use, as well as facilitators. Even Canada has taken interest in how Oregon model is being developed. In a tweet in August, the Canadian Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Carolyn Bennett, reported that she met with members of the Oregon psilocybin program, including Kate Brown, in what was termed a surprise move to develop more background on psilocybin legalization. The Oregon Psilocybin Advisory Board, or the OPAB, gave us a presentation on the state's framework for psilocybin services from manufacturing and delivery to purchase and consumption of the services, as well as the ballot measure 109 that passed in 2020. Canada has its own issues with psilocybin, obviously. 8 Canadians have filed a lawsuit in late July against the government and the ministers of health regarding patient access to psilocybin and psilocybin-based therapies. The Oregon Advisory Board recommended a draft to administrative rules mid-September. Those rules will further refine after the rules of the advisory committee in September and the public comment period in November. The Oregon Psilocybin Services, or the OPS, a new section within the Oregon Health Advisory or Authority of Public Health Division, Center for Public Protection, was created to implement Measure 109 and will finalize and adopt the rules by December 30th of 2022. I feel like that's like kind of a bit of a short window to adopt the rules and implement within the beginning of next year. So I have a slight feeling that this actual implementation will eventually get pushed back a little, but no guarantees and, not promising that either. But as the rulemaking is happening, there's continues to be snags along the way. According to a report by the Oregon Public Broadcasting, a large portion of Oregon may lose access to psilocybin treatment before a single center opens. That's because Measure 109 gives local governments the option to send the issue back to voters, either for a total ban or a 2-year moratorium. As of late August, more than 40 cities and counties are expected to put the issue before voters in the general election in November. Reminder for everybody who is a felon in Oregon, you do have the ability to vote. This is a very important issue, and it will be up on the general election at local levels in November. Pay attention to your area. With most of them considering complete bans, if passed, the measure would create expansive tracts in eastern, central, and southern Oregon where people would not be able to access psilocybin at all. Advocates fear that the fueling of these efforts against psilocybin, driven by part of the widespread misconception about the drug and what access will look like when Measure 109 takes effect in January, are going to stifle its progress. Many mistakenly believe that psilocybin will be recreational available like cannabis, that not all that use is not allowed under the terms of the measure, but it appears to be a valid concern because of the subtext in the neighboring Washington decriminalization rules. Washington's legislation, which takes form of a ballot initiative to be voted on in November, allows anyone over 21 to purchase a microdose of psilocybin after a brief preparation session with a facilitator. They can take it with them for consumption and use it at their leisure, rather than sitting in the pseudo-clinical setting being monitored before and after psilocybin dose has worn off. In addition, under the Oregon program, facilitators do not need to be college graduates or taken any medical-related college courses, according to the OPS. This calls into question for some whether or not this is actually a medical program at all. Other issues revolve around the type of depth of the facilitator training that will be offered within the state and the physical and psychological safety of people being treated during and after their psilocybin tests. So the opposition to Oregon's proposed program, currently Oregon has opposition proponents beginning with nearly 1.3 million people in the state who voted in favor of Measure 109, but the Oregon's medical community is still pushing back with no clear response from the state, and it is a clear sign to other cities and states finding working reliable, tested business model for a similar medical but not medical psilocybin program could be fraught with discord. And this is so true. Like, I can't quite understand how they're going to easily facilitate this. I do see the idea of microdoses being something that at some point in states that do have legalized cannabis, that would be kind of incorporated into that overall sales channel and the tracking process. But I'm really not sure. For example, one recent study authored by researchers in Oregon Health and Science University warned about the outcome of mixing psychedelics with other widely used psychiatric medicines. That is probably one of the biggest concerns that I have as well, is continuously when we're having people selling products at dispensaries, their, bud tenders don't actually know how to help somebody when they are taking other medications. And all too often, they'll answer a question that really should be left to a medical professional to answer, and they should defer to, you should ask your physician, but instead they answer that question. And so that thought of not having the clinical or the medical research or the training is a bit of a concern to me as well, especially when we talk about something more in depth psychologically than cannabis is. As a psychotropic, it is a psychedelic psychotropic. So this is something that I definitely think that we need to pay attention to. Curious to see how this pans out in Oregon. I'm really curious to see or hear what everyone else on the stage has to say. I'm hopeful that there's a doctor in the room that can comment on the lack of medical training and their opinions on that. Super curious. I'm going to go ahead and take my microdose now. I waited till after the article so I could read properly, but I'm Nichole West, getting high and 9 with y'all.
I think it's kind of crazy that, I understand the desire to have somebody with some college training for, some sort of medical profession. But, I do want to point out the fact that we've got shamans in the Amazon jungle down in Peru who have been administering a far, far more potent substance for over 10,000 years at this point. And they seem to understand pretty well, there's some really good concepts that before you go down for an ayahuasca retreat, they tell you, here's the diet you need to eat for a month before you come down, like no red meat, no pork. Make sure that you're off these types of medications and they clean them out of your system.
We're talking microdoses of psilocybin,
that's also the shitty part. It's it's a friggin' microdose.
And then we're also
I'm with you on that.
Somebody ate the mushrooms, cool. Let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
But a microdose,
I would rather get my information from somebody with generations of knowledge rather than somebody who synthesized some shit and put together some fucking some recent data facts that don't even have a full scope of what's really going on.
The bigger problem, though, Rico, is the facade of the amount of people that are going to be facilitators that think that because they've fucking gone into some K-hole for a fucking month that they're the right answer to help me understand my psilocybin journey. The amount of
I'm not talking about them.
There's going to be a majority of them, bro. I'm not trying to shit on this movement, but the amount of shaman, real, like Ed's talking about, those people, how many of those are going to be fucking up in Oregon, take this mushroom?
Well, those dudes also have trained for literally their entire life. They were born into a shaman family. They were raised to be a shaman.
My homeboy Jared has he's from Southern Oregon. He has red hair and dreadlocks, and he's taught me all I need to know about psychedelics. We shout out to Jared. He's actually my homeboy too. But seriously, I thought they were just legalizing everything in Oregon. I thought they were just going to decriminalize.
So they decriminalized drugs, but they legalized the access to psilocybin. So you can be you could be smoking meth on the corner or whatever. That's not the ability to have access to it and walk into a store and it be open. That's the thing that they did for psilocybin specifically. They did legalize drugs or decriminalize drugs. Didn't legalize it, decriminalized. But
they just made it so you can't get arrested.
Yeah.
It's the same as being in downtown Los Angeles, though. I was walking on 7th and Grand last night, and I was just walking past a dude who was cooking up some crack on some foil. Hey,
yeah,
look at that.
I'll bring back to our conversation. Was it from last week? I still have not seen meth out in the wild.
Oh, bro, I see it all the time. I see people with their glass pipes smoking their 10 and 2 all the time.
Oh man.
But nonetheless, that was a fantastic story. Thank you for that, Nichole. That was great. Welcome to Los Ashes, the headiest city in America. Los Ashes is a 10-pound smokable city curated and created by the world-renowned roller Weavers. In the past, Weavers has amazed cannabis lovers with his roll jobs, such as the smokable 5-pound rocket launcher and the 10-pound Darth Vader. But now Weavers is rolling an entire city. You can have your business featured in Los Ashes with a ton of different sponsorship opportunities available. Contact Weavers at smokablecity.com for full sponsorship information.
The thoughts and opinions and general shade thrown on the High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any substance in any country, area, territory, or its authorities. Views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Our sponsors do not imply, constitute any endorsement by us, the expression of any opinion whatsoever on the part of any speaker or anyone on stage. If you're an easily offended person, this show is probably not for you. Also, fuck off.
Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX. Located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get High at 9 for 10% off your full order.
Our next correspondent is known well in certain circles for cooking up excellent and baking delicious treats in DC. But don't let the apron fool you. She's still a feisty redheaded conservative with proven Mayflower roots and an unhealthy love for safe banking. Coming to the stage next, the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider, Gretchen Gailey. What's happening? Now that you have presented your long form birth certificate,
yes,
what you got for us today?
Good afternoon. My headline is coming from Marijuana Moment. And of course, it's about safe banking. Booker calls for end to marijuana prohibition to solve twin crisis of ongoing arrests and lack of banking access for businesses. Senator Cory Booker says that federal marijuana prohibition has created a twin crisis where people are being arrested over cannabis in many states, while elsewhere, state legal businesses are being locked out of financial services, compromising equity. The senator released a video on Friday that underscores the consequences of the policy disconnect and stresses the need to enact reforms such as the marijuana legalization bill he filed in July with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Ron Wyden. He said, federal marijuana prohibition is beginning to be more and more absurd, especially because most states now have moved to legalize marijuana, whether it's for medical use or for overall adult use. And now we have a twin crisis of cannabis criminalization and a lack of access to the banking system for marijuana businesses. While Booker described the banking issue in terms of equity implications, explaining how small business owners have struggled to compete without a means of obtaining loans and other services that are available to traditional industries, he didn't mention a package of legislation that Schumer is putting together in consultation with bipartisan and bicameral offices. The information proposal, which is colloquially known as SAFE Plus, is expected to contain cannabis banking protections, as well as other incremental reforms like expungements, veterans, medical cannabis access, and more. Booker recently said that he expects the bill to be introduced sometime during the lame duck session after the November midterms, but in the new videos, he only talks about the broad legalization legislation as a solution to the twin crisis, despite the expectation that it does not have enough support to advance through the Senate. The senator has been adamant about the need to holistically end prohibition first before taking the incremental step of freeing up financial services for the industry. But he's increasingly signaled that he's willing to compromise in order to get some level of reform enacted this session. In the new video, he said that part of the problem under the status quo is that small marijuana businesses are being priced out of the market, allowing large multi-state operators to acquire them, a trend of consolidation that's causing the industry to become woefully not diverse. He said, we are not seeing the kind of democratizing force many of us hoped that marijuana legalization would be. So now we need to move on the federal level. He said that the CAOA would bring about a true end to this decades-long prohibition of marijuana that allows states more freedom and has important provisions of restorative justice to help make sure that small business people can access business loans and to help people get their records expunged and more. Booker released a video on the same day that he virtually participated in a cannabis conference in Pennsylvania with state lawmakers and officials like Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, a U.S. Senate candidate running on a pro-legalization platform. The senator emphasized that their lawmakers have a historic opportunity right now for our country to rectify past wrongs and to create a more just, fair America with more opportunity. Sources familiar with the state of negotiations over Safe Plus have signaled that the bill drafting is fairly far along. Given Senator Booker's statements, I would guess that he is not a part at all of the Safe Plus drafting. Frankly, because he doesn't know exactly what he's doing when it comes to cannabis. He just keeps spouting the same points that Chuck Schumer keeps giving him over and over again. The only thing that Cory Booker has become good at is backpedaling on safe banking, just like Rico Lamitte. This Gretchen for High at 9 News.
Really?
Damn, she changed. She went with fucking on the way out.
Yeah. Gretchen got them.
Take from all angles today. Okay.
Getting it.
Gigi, okay. Really? Yeah. I'm concerned that, he's talking about this twin crisis. Why is he not talking about the triple crisis and talking about the opioids that we're still dealing with as well? If he really wants to drive the fucking point home and broaden his support, why doesn't he bring that up too?
I think why he's not going to bring that up.
Because big pharma is in his fucking pockets. Follow the fucking money.
Well, I was gonna say another reason.
Why is that?
I was gonna say another reason because then he'd be forced to address the border crisis because of the mass fentanyl coming across the border.
Well, all you got to do is put him on a charter jet and send him wherever you want, right?
What's that?
Charter jets.
Original thought. That was Gretchen. That was gonna definitely be my fucking This
Cory Booker can only regurgitate talking points that are given to him, and more often than not, he says them wrong.
He's like Ron Burgundy in the teleprompter. He's like, "Fuck you, San Diego."
Oh boy!
I mean, this goes to our conversation from yesterday. Like, we need more people that are putting forward messaging because, like not everybody is going to hover towards a Cory Booker. And whether it's his delivery, whether it's his just regurgitating everything, all these fucking talking points, and not everybody's going to hover towards a John Fetterman either. We need more people pushing this message.
They're definitely not rallying behind John Fetterman in the great state of Pennsylvania. But nonetheless, I can tell you what, I did get a call over the weekend from some people, and word on the streets in D.C. is that Safe Banking Plus has high possibility of going through in the lame duck session after the election.
You down with SBP?
Yeah, you know me.
Yeah, you know me.
Schedule or bust.
That's right.
I appreciate Cory Booker and that his heart is in the right place. I just don't think he should be out front of this issue as much as he is with his lack of an understanding of how the industry really works.
I have a question.
Especially now he's no longer with. Yeah, now that Rosario Dawson is no longer with him, he's a dangerous man. You got to be careful.
I have a question for you, Gretchen.
They broke up.
Oh yeah.
I have a serious question.
Yes.
With Cory Booker, since he said he was going to die on the Hill on this issue, is he dead already now with these statements?
No, he's not on the Hill.
I mean, hold on. Let's be real.
Still in his chest.
Every single congressman is dead on the inside, so that's got to count.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know
whether they're on the Hill
or
on the street.
No, politicians are all dead on the inside, J-Beck.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're in preparation. Hold on. Put your hand on your chest really quick. You feel that heartbeat?
I don't feel anything.
Exactly.
Listen to your heart.
I feel nothing. But that was a fantastic story, Gretchen. I can't wait for us to have Safe Banking Plus, so then that way we can have some bank accounts. But coming up next, our resident tech guy and the voice of High at 9 News, Ed is a regulated cannabis industry veteran with 13 years of experience across all verticals. He currently working for Blaze as the products manager overseeing their retail software products. What do you have this morning for us, Ed?
Hey. Well, good morning to everybody. Thank you, Jason, for the intro. And Rico, I appreciate the fist pumping in the background, too.
Yeah.
You can see that. I see you.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Coming up next to the stage is none other than the Ed Schwartz.
Appreciate y'all. I'm actually here to talk about, we're going a little bit outside the United States today. We're going down under, as they say, because there's actually some cool stuff happening in Australia. So the Australian Greens, which is one of their political parties, are aiming to legalize recreational cannabis by 2023. That's next year, y'all. Like, we're 3 months away, and Australia's talking about having legal cannabis next year. So it's actually pretty cool. So one of their senators from New South Wales, his name is David Shoebridge, he announced on Twitter yesterday that he's obtained legal advice that shows that the Greens could pass a bill to legalize adult cannabis at the national level. He goes on to say, all state legislation criminalizing its legal use, possession, and sale could be overridden. We could legalize cannabis across the country this year, he tweeted. So, according to an explainer published by the Greens, the Australian federal parliament could legalize it because they're actually working on a draft law that will be available for public consultation by the end of this year. From the Greens Party perspective, they're saying Australia has a clear constitutional power to be able to create a legal and national cannabis market. The advice was provided by a professor named Patrick Kaiser, a constitutional and human rights lawyer, and he suggests that Australia could legalize cannabis through Section 51 of the Constitution when it refers to copyrights, patents of inventions and designs, and trademarks, which is, to me, the most like left-handed way we can come into it, but it's kind of like that pharma play almost. So I appreciate the way they're kind of looking at it, like, let's give them a taste of their own medicine, right? They go on to say that this section could regulate cannabis strains as plant varieties and then cause them to be listed in a schedule in respect of which the Commonwealth has exclusive regulatory control. In other words, Australia would be able to regulate the cultivation, the sale, and the licensing of all the ancillary machinery provisions needed to create a national legal market for cannabis. So we're talking top down, the picks and the shovels in the gold mines themselves. Once legalized, all state and territory laws that prohibit the use of cannabis under Commonwealth laws would cease to have effect, as empowering the regulation of cannabis at the federal level would override state and territory laws criminalizing adult use cannabis, in staunch contrast to how we do things here in the U.S., as Gretchen mentioned earlier, with states' rights. The Greens said that the consultation to draft that bill to regulate cannabis would consider a series of comprehensive measures to regulate the industry, including the appropriate number of plants for individuals to grow legally, the proper legal sanctions for unlawful sale or distribution, additional taxation measures, and where that revenue could be allocated, and then also prohibitions on the tobacco and alcohol industry from entering the cannabis industry, which is great to see, and then also the role of grower cooperatives. So lots of cool stuff coming down from there. They go on to say that although the campaign launched by the Greens to legalize adult use cannabis at the federal level may be supported by a large portion of the population, there are still some legal hurdles to overcome. One of the big ones that we think about is, of course, the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, which Australia is a signatory to. And so if they followed through, it would be considered a breach to this international treaty that has been signed by them and multiple other nations. But we do have this wonderful nation just across the border up north, our friends up in Canada, I always do that. But they legalized in 2018, and the International Narcotics Control Board didn't take any action, although they did openly express, I believe, regrets about the decision. So in political terms, it's unclear whether the federal parliament would approve this in May. The Australian Labor Party, which still maintains the majority of seats in the House of Representatives, really only supports medical cannabis, and they've been very open about that. Anthony Albanese, the newly elected prime minister and the leader of the Australian Labor Party, said in a radio program on Triple M broadcasted in 2019, when he was the leader of the opposition, that cannabis legalization was an issue for the states, not the federal government. He's quoted saying, "It's a matter for state and territory governments, and they'll make their own decisions based upon their consultation with the community," he said, adding that there was no federal ban to prevent it from happening. So they've got lots of options down there in Australia. Medical did become legal under prescription in 2016, but consuming recreational does remain an offense in most states and territories of Australia, where they do have some differing laws from state to state. However, the Australian Capital Territory passed a bill in 2019 allowing for the possession of up to 50 grams of dried or 150 grams of fresh cannabis and the growth of 2 plants for personal use. In that case, even though the Australian Capital Territory's cannabis law conflicted with federal law, the federal government didn't take action to overturn the controversial legislation. While the legislation campaign through the use of federal power launched by the Greens is likely destined to be an open a public debate over cannabis and the balance of power between states and territories in Australia, Australians seem to have a clear idea about legalization. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, cannabis is the country's most widely used illicit drug right now. So, it's already there. They're actually saying, and they've shown to see here in the National Drug Strategy Household Survey, it showed that 36% of people over the age of 14 had used cannabis in their lifetime, and 11.6% had used cannabis in the previous 12 months. The Institute also found that 78% of Australians aged 14 and over don't support the possession of cannabis being a criminal offense. And over 40% of Australians believe recreational cannabis should be legalized. So it seems like we are really getting close in Australia. There's a lot of things happening. They're talking about from top down and bottom up level. So hopefully we'll see something good out of here in Australia soon. And being that I am in the cannabis industry and one of those people selling the picks and shovels, I'm hoping they go pretty quick because I would love to take a trip down under and fly down to Australia.
Ed.
Just a great story.
Ed, you mentioned that it's a left-handed approach, right?
I said top down.
You said a left-handed approach.
I have real questions. I have real questions. So Australia, I'm going to override this. I know exactly where this is going. Australia has 6 states, and at the end of the day, only one of them really fucking matters in the whole country, because 5 of them are almost completely inhabited, and 3 of them we shouldn't even we should leave the fuck alone and let them do whatever the fuck they want, because Australia is another America if we as far as the way that they fucking came in and appropriated people, pushed them out into their fucking corners, destroyed their health, ruined their fucking lives. So there's an appropriation conversation that needs to happen. There is a social equity conversation that needs to happen. But the only place in the whole fucking giant country that matters is New South Wales, which is where Sydney is. And so that little hub.
Well, hold on. There's Victoria, which has Melbourne. Melbourne is almost as large as Sydney. Brisbane
as far as
is
the
huge,
influence on what's going to happen in the country, as well as far as who's going to be growing these products.
Are the greenies the same in Australia as they are in the UK?
Oh, I don't know.
So does anybody can anybody in the audience answer that?
Are they the same kind of greenies?
By the way, yeah.
I don't think they're the same kind of greenies.
It was not a joke. The party.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. So Queensland and New South Wales are where all the agriculture is in Australia. So when we talk about growing something, and then I'm talking about Sydney as far as its influence on the country too, in a big way. Sydney is the California of Australia, if that makes sense.
It's a more liberal.
They're going to do more. They're going to push more. They've already been the more liberal when it comes to their possession regulations and how they treated you if you got caught with it. But did it say, Ed? My question is, did it say that at a state level? Because I'm looking at the way the government works. I just had to double check the hierarchy of everything. The states could override it completely.
It looks like the states do have some power where they're going to be able to actually they can enact it. It seems like there is the threat of the federal government coming after them and overturning it. I'm not sure through what process in the Australian government they have that available to them, but if there is any sort of record-setting precedent, like I said in the article, there is one territory that has legalized possession of up to 50 grams of dry or 150 grams of wet, which I don't know who the hell came up with those numbers, because that ratio is way the hell off for wet weight. We all know it's 85% usually, right? 85% wet loss. Am I alone here?
What did they say it was?
50 grams of dry or 150 grams of wet, and you can also cultivate 2 plants with no criminal charges.
So you basically can grow more as a medical patient in New York than you could as a person in Australia.
I mean, good luck getting anything to grow in Australia anyways, if you're outside of, like Nicole said, that New South Wales eastern coast area. I'd love to see somebody try and grow some cannabis in Alice Springs, which, if nobody knows where Alice Springs is, that's dead center in the middle of the outback.
Don't they call it the bush?
Yeah, ask Johnny Depp. You can't even bring a dog to Australia without them getting on your fucking shit.
Yeah.
Don't they call it the bush in the middle, where no one goes?
You don't beat around it.
Okay, so the Australian Greens, commonly known as the Greenies, are a confederation of Green state and territory political parties in Australia. No, they're not. They're the Liberal National Party of Queensland, or the largest by the elected representation. No, they're kind of.
Would this be considered Australia's Green New Deal?
I mean, it's definitely it's a new Green Deal.
They're traced back to the early environmental movement in Australia about the Tasmania group were the first ones, and then also the nuclear disarmament in Western Australia. There was so much nuclear fucking testing that happened in Australia. We just the UK came in and just fucking that was like a testing zone, half of that country.
Well, didn't they sent like all of their incarcerated people over there, just like exiled them, and then they just
that's true.
Yeah,
that's
lots of fucked up shit that happened in Australia. That they'll have their day of reckoning at some point too. But let's keep it.
I mean, let's go back to that end of the world video. Australia's just going to be down there like WTF, mates.
Totally.
But what about the Kiwis? What are they going to say? Easiest way to piss off an Australian person or a New Zealander is call them the other. They get really
oh boy.
Well, that's like New York versus New Jersey, bro. It's literally.
So I got friends in business associates on both sides, and they just get really, really pissed. So I just don't say nothing. I just say down under. Either way, our next correspondent and bringing us home today is a cannabis product extraordinaire and serial cannapreneur. She's co-founder of Kimia. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Canagram and the Women's Cannabis Competition, and head of brand relations at Conception Nurseries. This crusader for female enterprises in cannabis loves showing the world cannabis motherhood and executive lifestyle that comes with being a boss do indeed go together, despite what the lamestream media might tell you. It's my absolute pleasure to bring to the stage Mandy Tingler. What you got for us?
Thank you, Rico. All right, guys. Well, I always like to end us on a positive or exciting note. So today's story that I bring you is called Cancer-Stricken Woman's Disease Vanished, only to a 49-year-old stopped taking cannabis oil and magic mushrooms. As a woman who fought off cancer saw her tumors return when she stopped taking cannabis and magic mushrooms, her doctors revealed. The unidentified 49-year-old, thought to live in Britain, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in August of 2018, and her scans revealed that it had spread to her bones, liver, and lymph nodes. Remember that. This is very important as we get through the rest of the article. She immediately underwent chemo and was given antibody drugs designed to thwart disease. But the woman also decided to start taking cannabis oil every day, and she started intermittent microdosing of magic mushrooms from November, according to the medics who treated her. By January of 2019, her scans showed that her cancer had completely gone, and there was no sign of the disease. Chemo was stopped, but she stayed on hepsicin, one of the antibody drugs originally doled out. Follow-up scans that September confirmed her cancer was still in remission. As a result, she halved her cannabis intake and completely stopped taking the magic mushrooms. The woman remained cancer-free for 18 months in total. Tests in June 2020 revealed her disease had returned. Experts from Imperial College London wrote in the journal Drug Science. Following that diagnosis and under medical supervision, she stepped up her doses again, restarted chemotherapy, and began radiotherapy. Her disease was stable as of her last appointment in October. Doctors even claimed there was evidence it was receding once more. Ryan Zafar and colleague highlighted the possibility that both drugs could help maximize traditional cancer treatment. Writing in the case report, they said, "This brings up the possibility that withdrawal of the cannabinoid and psychedelic therapies may have contributed to the return of cancer." Cancer research in the UK says that the research has been mixed, but some studies have suggested that cannabinoids work in a similar way. Around 55,000 women in the UK and 264,000 in the US are diagnosed with breast cancer every year. What are we doing here in the US? Stage 4 doses usually only leave people with 3 years to live, while treatable. It cannot be cured. Patients are traditionally given a mixture of chemotherapy and targeted drugs like the woman in her first stage of treatment, as well as radiotherapy. Cannabis is not currently prescribed for cancer in the UK, although doctors can theoretically dish it out as part of a trial. Magic mushrooms are technically a Class A drug, and researchers did not explain how they were dished out legally. The woman in the most recent case went to the hospital in August of 2018 after noticing changes in her breast tissue where doctors performed a mammogram, biopsy, CT scan, and X-ray. Results in September showed that she had metastatic breast cancer that had spread to other parts of her body. She decided to start taking daily doses of cannabinoid oils, and before the metastatic diagnosis alongside standard treatment. The oils included both CBD and the chemical thought to have some medicinal benefit, and THC, which is the psychoactive element of cannabis that makes the user high. Under the direction of one of her doctors, she gradually increased the dose until the psychoactive effects felt too much. Scans in October showed that the tumor had halved in size. Microdosing involves taking around 1/10 of the dose required to get high from the psychedelic drugs. In her case, 10 to 20 milligrams at regular intervals were given throughout the day. In November, she also had her first sensory deprivation tank experience where she was given grams of mushrooms under a doctor's supervision. Sensory deprivation tanks see users placed in a saltwater bath where they float in darkness and no sound, creating similar effect to zero gravity. After the session, she was given a therapy reintegration session that made her feel reamed to the world. She said the combination of the cannabinoids and helped ease the suffering and made her feel like she was watching the experience rather than feeling it. Quoted in the journal, the woman said, when one is diagnosed with cancer, the mental, physical, emotional events which consume you and slowly chip away at you become a daily routine. Everything changes in a heartbeat, and suddenly death becomes your daily counterpart. It's dehumanizing, moralizing, and just plain horrific. Cannabis changes all of this, she says. It will ease the suffering of so many as it has eased mine. Cannabis provides hope. It provides help when you feel you just can't go on. I was able to eat. I was able to sleep. The nausea was almost non-existent. I could function, I could work, and I was no longer a slave to my disease. Products containing THC, including oils, gels, tablets, are Class B substances in the UK, and possession is punishable by up to 5 years. Medical marijuana containing the chemical is legal in 38 US states and DC, while cannabis is entirely legal in 18 states. And that pretty much wraps it up, guys. Basically, this takes us back to what Nicole was saying earlier, that there is definitely a need for more research on this topic, but clearly, folks, we are onto something here. It's undeniable and staring us in the face.
Yes,
thank you so
This
much
was
for
great.
that story. Yeah.
We do have Dr. Felicia up in Clubhouse.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Do you have a comment on this, Dr. Felicia?
Yes, I do. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This shows that when you have been cured or your cancer seems to be in remission, you should still continue your cannabis therapy at a lower dose because unless you have identified what is making you susceptible to develop cancer, you should keep the cannabis going.
Would it be like too far-fetched to say that most cancer could be considered a direct result of cannabinoid
deficiency?
Cannabinoid deficiency, yeah.
Yeah. It could.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. But you know, cancer cells pop up in all of us. But if you have a healthy, robust immune system, your immune system will destroy them before they can multiply. And if they can't destroy them, they'll keep them sequestered. So it's probably a combination of both. I mean, our endocrine system, so I'm sure it's a little bit of both.
Dr. Felicia, real quick, Dr. Felicia, are you pro chemotherapy? A lot of my doctor friends would all say that they would not take chemo if they were diagnosed with cancer. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and for me personally, I probably would not, depending on the cancer and the stage and all that. It would depend on the cancer and the, you know, long it is, but chemo's pretty rough. But I think most doctors recommend using cannabinoid therapy along with conventional chemo and radiation, whatever. But I probably would not for myself personally, but I wouldn't make that recommendation to the general population.
Thank you so much for your comments on that, Dr. Felicia. I always hope that you're gonna raise your hand whenever we're talking about something like this. There was actually a comment from LinkedIn from Coach Chella. When folks have success using cannabinoids to fight cancer, it's important to continue the cannabinoid for the rest of the life like a nutrient. Cannabis is a nutrient. And I think that's a really great way for us to end this day. Thank you all so much for tuning in. What a great conversation to be having. And definitely as somebody who has utilized cannabis for cancer treatment, I 100% agree with the continued use of therapy as it contains as a nutrient. So with that said, thank you all for getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Shout out to our audience supporters and a huge thank you to True Classic, Weavers, and LAXCC for keeping our lights on. Thank you to the correspondents for being amazing. And thank you to Cannabis for keeping me high every day. 3 is 4 for helping us create a space in this amazing cannabis miniverse, and each and every one of you for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us.
Hey. Oh yeah, run that shit.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nichole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.